very warm hello. My name is ANITA MENDIRATTA, Special Advisor to the Secretary General of the United Nations World Tourism Organization. And it is my great pleasure to be with you today, coming in from lovely London for the third edition of the West Africa Tourism Roundtable Series, Health, Safety and Security, talking about destination competitiveness in West Africa, making the essential connection. I'd like to thank Red Clay for the opportunity to be with you all today. I am truly grateful, and I bring with me the warm regards from the Secretary General of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, Zurab Pololikashvili, who is delighted to see that this session is taking place with continued focus on how we can all play a role in restarting our essential industry of travel, tourism, and aviation. As we know, we are very blessed to be part of one of the most exciting industries in the world. Up until the end of 2029, this was an industry experiencing profound growth, unlocking imagination, unlocking opportunity. But sadly, in early 2020, everything got locked in. We saw the world suddenly shutting its borders and its skies as the coronavirus, COVID-19 to be specific, started to move from the east across the west, shutting down, as I said, borders and skies, closing businesses, putting us all back in our homes, and sadly, clearing out any of the potential for aircraft to reach the skies once more. We have seen no industry as badly devastated as travel, tourism, and aviation. All of us have experienced a time that is unlike any in our generation. Why? Because for the first time in our generation, the entire world at the same time has experienced a crisis that is democratic. It doesn't care about borders, doesn't care about age, culture, religion, professions. Most importantly, it's invisible. So it's hit us all at a very primal level, making it very clear that the fear of travel, the fearing stepping outside our doors, is something that we needed to find a way of controlling. But in that first year, it was very challenging. If we look back to 2019, the travel and tourism industry was reaching levels of 1.5 billion international travelers, 10 consecutive years of growth of between 3 and 5%. Unprecedented. We saw as well that it was responsible for more than 1 in 10 jobs in the world. Significantly, a high share of the jobs came from women, and 54% of the jobs went to those of youth in the workplace itself. So critical in terms of unlocking the opportunity for everyone to play a part in the global economy, right next door or right around the world. Export revenues were up at 1.7 trillion US dollars. We were the third largest export category in the world. And as I said, we were the fastest growing sector. Sadly, however, with the closure of borders and skies in 2020, we saw all of our growth lose 1 billion international tourists. And if we think domestically, that can often be 5 to 6 times that number. Our numbers went down to almost 75% in international travel decline, throwing us back to 1990s rates of travel. It cost the world $1.7 trillion in US receipts and 2 trillion US dollars in terms of global GDP. Critically, between 100 and 120 million people lost their jobs. Now, if we think about that, that's not just 120 million people. That's one person representing one family losing their job, and as a result, destabilizing, sadly, their own sense of security, that of their family, and that of their community. And as people around the world saw all these job losses, everyone, employed and unemployed, grew in terms of their own fears. And we saw from an aviation perspective, unbelievable grounding. At the height of the pandemic, 16,000 commercial aircraft were grounded around the world. The only flights that were flying were either those that were trying to get people repatriated back to their homes if they were stuck when the borders shut, or it was for moving around essential workers, medical aid professionals, medical supplies, to different parts of the world to try to contain this remarkable virus that was truly putting us all in its grip of both physical lockdown and fear. From an ICAO point of view, in terms of global aviation, we have never seen what we saw in 2020. And sadly, it continues into 2021 as the world cautiously starts to reopen, but we still face challenge. Last year, we went down 60% in terms of passenger traffic. And as we can see, we have never, through any crisis in our generation, experienced similar before. And as our Secretary General is saying, we need to make sure that we rebuild travel and tourism. We need the travel industry to come back, but it must do so in a way that is much more secure, much more sustainable, and much more connected on a global future for every single link in the value chain.
It is imperative that we rebuild the tourism sector, but it must be in a way that is safe, equitable, and climate friendly. Transport-related greenhouse gas emissions could rebound sharply if recovery is not aligned with climate goals. Supporting the millions of livelihoods that depend on tourism means building a sustainable and responsible travel experience that is safe for host communities, workers, and travelers. To aid recovery, I have identified 5 priority areas. First, mitigate the socio-economic impacts of the crisis. Second, build resilience across the entire tourism value chain. Third, maximize the use of technology in the tourism sector. Fourth, promote sustainability and green growth. And fifth, foster partnerships to enable tourism to further support the Sustainable Development Goals. Let us ensure that tourism regains its position as a provider of decent jobs, stable incomes, and the protection of our cultural and natural heritage. Thank you.
What is fascinating about that video is not only the message, but also the messenger, that the head of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, our Secretary General, is saying that ultimately the future of world recovery, socially, economically, culturally, and environmentally, depends on travel and tourism. And as we all know, travel and tourism depends on aviation, especially in a region like West Africa, which is such a critical region for connecting the world to Africa. If we look at proximity to Europe, to Asia, to the Americas, West Africa is perfectly placed, but that connection can only take place if it happens through global aviation opening up. When we look at international travel and what we anticipate for recovery, we can see here from the UNWTO that all of it depends on rebuilding momentum solidly through seasons of travel. If we look at the height of the pandemic, it was at the lows in terms of international travel closures. 97% drop in all of travel as 100% of borders were closed. Slowly, as we move forward, borders are starting to reopen again. But they're doing so very cautiously, recognizing that at the same time borders are opening and vaccines are being rolled out, new mutations of the virus are occurring. The Delta variant now, which is traveling at a very rapid rate as it has a much higher level of contagion than the previous variants, is now spreading around the world. So while borders open up, sadly, they start shutting down again, and governments become rightly nervous because, as we know, this is a healthcare crisis before it is an economic, travel and tourism, and aviation crisis. Everything is about making sure that we have safe, secure, and healthy travel to be able to open up the world in a way that really is sustainable in terms of momentum of our industry. When we look at what is making travelers nervous right around the world, we see it very much that even if we look at Africa, compared to the rest of the world, it's very similar. Traveler confidence and fear is based not necessarily in getting the virus itself, but in getting stuck because of the virus, with suddenly surges in case numbers and new variants spreading, closing borders when either people are about to travel or while they're in travel. Similarly, with borders closing, they might not close, but the regulations change. Travel restrictions requiring quarantine, self-isolation, more PCR testing. All of these are making travelers very nervous, whether they're business or leisure, about getting back out again, fearful of what it's going to be like when they are out and questioning the trust of how they're going to get back in. If we look at when we expect travel to rebound to 2019 levels, we see that in Africa, there's fear that it's only going to be back in 2022. If we look forward to those years ahead, we can see that the UNWTO panel of experts are feeling it's very much going to be about next year. Why? Critically, that's linked to the vaccine rollout. And with the vaccine rollout, the confidence in opening the borders and reestablishing aviation routes again. These are all interconnected. These are all interdependent. And that is going to be ultimately the way in which we need to look strategically at the industry connecting the world in the future of travel, tourism, and aviation. How have travelers changed? A very quick look at what the UNWTO found. We know that domestic travel is extremely strong, not only because people want to stay at home because they trust it, but in many countries they couldn't get out to begin with. Domestic travel was a powerful lever for governments to get the local ecosystem moving around socially and economically again, unlocking those value chains even when they couldn't unlock international borders. Travelers are wanting to get away, they're wanting to get into rural areas, getting out to nature. It's not just because travelers are desperate to get out, but we have all been wired for the last year and a half to stay apart, to social distance, to be conscious of our space, to not shake hands, to not have the usual embraces we would in the past. People want to psychologically get out, but feel safe doing so, which is why higher density city destinations are not as popular. This is a powerful opportunity for areas, especially like West Africa, to unlock the cultural, natural, and rural tourism opportunities that they have, because these are now much more attractive. So, traditional target markets and target messaging is going to need to change in the future in a good way, because it unlocks new opportunities for destinations to relook their offering linked to new motivations of travelers. Still, travelers have their continued concerns, health and safety at the heart of it. And linked to the issue of concerns about regulations changing, bookings are taking place last minute so that there is confidence that if I book my trip, I know the airline is operating, I know the route is going to be traveling, I know it's safe to go, and there'll be no problem when I come back. Equally, we have younger travelers, much more confident and resilient getting back out. But whoever they are and at whatever age, everyone is looking at travel more responsibly, looking at making sure that they leave only footprints, that their impact on destinations, culturally, socially, economically, and environmentally, is all very good for the destinations, especially when it comes to mobilizing those SMEs, and especially in West Africa, where we have such a powerful network of SMEs and SMMEs making up the tourism economy. This is invaluable because travelers are now wanting to see exactly how their travel is doing good for the local economy itself. When we look at forward bookings, we see again domestic travel is still remaining strong because people feel more confident of traveling within and not getting caught if borders close. Slowly, international travel is increasing as regional blocks like the Schengen bloc open up, certain regions in different continental areas, and ultimately corridors being created between, for instance, the United States and Europe. Certain countries now opening up those travel. Australia and New Zealand, similarly. So there are ways that are being established, and at the heart of those ways is aviation routes. We go back to the principle that aviation is the primary artery for international growth. But we see passenger numbers are still struggling. These are the RPK changes of 2019 March, looking now vis-a-vis May of 2021. We see declines right across the world. That we know. And sadly, that's going to continue as long as the virus continues. So how do we get through this time? What do we need to be conscious of? Very much it is about health, safety, and security. It all comes back to that, allowing people to be mobile again because psychologically they feel comfortable once more. Because at the moment, as I said earlier, we're all dealing with an invisible crisis. None of us know whether COVID-19 is around us or not. So as a result, heightened levels of cautions are being put in place. When it comes to traveling, we all know that PCR tests are going to be very much part of the future of travel. The challenge with PCR tests, however, not only that they're uncomfortable, but they are costly in terms of time and finances. So for someone traveling, they need to get a PCR test before they fly. Often there's a rapid test at the airport. There might be a PCR test on landing into the destination. Before they leave the destination, another PCR test. When they land where they are going into their next stop, if it's home, there might be between 2 to 3 PCR tests for guarantees of safety, day 2, day 8, and if one wants a test and release, on day 5. So there can be up to 7 PCR tests required for every single passenger. And with PCR tests being primarily the expense of travelers, that is significant. So whether someone is traveling for business or for leisure, this has become a part of the cost of travel. We know at an individual level, whether we're traveling or not, we still need to respect the protocols. Keeping face masks on, being able to keep our hands clean by using sanitization, using water as frequently as we can, and making sure that we maintain space, keeping those protocols a part of our life until we know our lives can continue safely, having controlled the pandemic. The vaccines are being rolled out, thankfully, so that anyone around the world who wishes to have a vaccine should be kept as a priority to be able to get the vaccines. Sadly, there are different paces of vaccine rollout, but the world is committed to making this happen. We just need to make sure it happens consistently, quickly, and confidently to be able to again open up our skies once more, because ultimately it is about putting control back in our hands. We all have had the control taken away from us. All of us, whether we're in West Africa, Southern Africa, in Europe, in Asia, in the Americas, all of us had our lives shut down in the first quarter of last year. That sense of control is vital to being able to have a desire and a willingness to go back out into the world, which is why the work that was done by IATA in creating the travel pass was exceptional, because it literally takes all the information we need and puts it securely in the hands of the travelers.
COVID-19 is changing the way we travel. Health requirements like testing and vaccinations will have a greater impact on where and how we can fly. This is why we have developed IATA Travel Pass, a one-stop shop to securely and conveniently let you verify that you meet COVID-19 health requirements for your journey. The app is simple and easy to use. First, it enables you to create a secure digital version of your passport on your mobile phone, which will link your COVID test or proof of vaccination and travel information to your verified identity. You can then add your flight details. The app will automatically let you know what travel and health requirements are needed for your destination. This information is supplied by Thematic, the industry's most trusted source for global travel regulations. If you need a test, it will provide you with a list of verified health centers near your point of departure. There, your digital ID will be confirmed using your physical passport, which will allow the lab to securely send test results to your mobile device. Once governments issue digital vaccine certificates, you'll be able to upload yours to the app. If you meet the health requirements for your trip, you will receive an OK to travel notification. And with that, you're ready to fly. You can check in from home, sharing your status with the airline or border authorities before travel, or by showing it throughout your journey. All your data will be encrypted and saved on your phone, which means it will not be stored on a central database, and nobody but you can access it. The app's digital ID function will also pave the way for a future where travel is even more contactless. And IATA Travel Pass can act as your digital passport. It is a secure and user-friendly solution that travelers, airlines, and governments can trust, either on its own or incorporated by airlines into their own app. IATA Travel Pass gives you certainty in an uncertain world, so you can once again be reunited with family and friends, attend that important business meeting, or take a much-needed holiday and reconnect with the world and all it has to offer.
Absolutely fantastic. And that is about global aviation doing its bit to pull everyone together to ensure that travel and tourism is able to reach for the skies once more. Because we've all missed someone. We are travelers. As much as we are practitioners, we are all travelers. Everyone has missed someone. Everyone has missed an opportunity. Everyone has missed a milestone. We all want to be traveling together because ultimately we are travelers and our world needs to be connected once more through travel.
Movement defines us.
Standing still is not an option.
We must come together again under shared values.
With sustainability as a guiding principle.
We are the innovators, the game changers.
We are travelers who celebrate diversity and champion solidarity.
Growing back for people and planet.
Unlocking opportunities for millions.
And leaving nobody behind.
The world is waiting.
We will restart tourism.
Because as the Secretary General of the UNWTO says, while we don't have certainty around when, where, and how travel will reopen, we do have certainty, however, around one truth: travel will return, and it will do so stronger, safer, more unified, and sustainably than ever before. Our world needs travel. And in its need for travel, our world needs aviation. Wherever we are in the world, especially in a place like West Africa, we need aviation to keep us connected to the world, to keep us connected to opportunity, to possibility, to loved ones, to loved places. We need to work together for a safer future, a healthier future of aviation, to make one healthier for travel and tourism. And with that, I thank you very much again. My thanks again to Red Clay for this opportunity to be with you all. And I wish you all an exceptional session, and I wish you safe travels.